The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Raygan Kelly, and I am joined this week by two excellent co-hosts.
Laura Nash.
And Shane Kelly.
And this week we are talking about the Entropy Centre, which is a first-person puzzle game by Stubby Games. This is the first game from a indie developer headquartered in Burgess Hill, England, called Stubby Games, which is headed by Daniel Stubbington.
And by headed by, you mean is entirely Daniel Stubbington.
Solo developer Daniel Stubbington. First of all, I don't know if Daniel Stubbington is his real name or if it's just a name he made up to sound extra British. It's the most British-sounding thing I've ever heard. Maybe he could be something like, I don't know, Percival Stubbington IV or something like that.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yes.
Benedict I am prepared to not immediately discount him based on his last name. He does appear to have after a cursory Google search turns up multiple references to a live human being named Daniel Stubbington.
All right, so, good for you, Mr. Stubbington.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm really shocked that this is a solo developer deal. I mean, no game on this scale is ever completely solo. I don't find any details about it. I wouldn't be surprised if he had other collaborators in terms of maybe, music or other stuff. Certainly he hired voice actors. But it seems to be essentially a solo developer, Daniel Stubbington. This is a really impressive first-person puzzle game. Does anybody want to sort of intro what this thing is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's very difficult to talk about games in this space without almost immediately mentioning Portal. But this is it is a first-person puzzle game that takes place in a series of test chambers, very much like Portal. So the comparison is very much worn on its sleeve.
We're going to do that comparison here for the first few minutes, and then I'm going to get out a jar, and people are going to have to put a quarter in every time they say Portal after some point.
You simply can't because well, I have a lot to say about about comparisons with that particular genre and idea space. Like people's comparisons are a big part of the talk around this game. But to be specific on this one, in this game, it is that classic video game setup of, hey, you wake up in a weird place, don't know what's going on. Very soon afterwards, you find a talking gun that can rewind time, and you use that to go through a series of various different puzzles. I guess that's as much as I can really say without spoiling some of the narrative, so to speak.
I would say that a lot of that comes so early in the game by runtime that I don't think it's a huge spoiler. Although a lot of it is in the trailer.
Yeah,
so.
The trailer gives you a lot to go on. So essentially, you are on the moon, in a place called the Entropy Centre.
Always the best place for a game to take place.
Cool place to be on the moon. And in this game, as you start exploring, you find that this place is dedicated to collecting entropy energy by you doing these puzzles, and it is using that as a way of safeguarding the human race by being prepared to rewind time with these time rewinding devices. The gun that you're holding, as I mentioned, a talking gun, has a very kind of funny helper personality. Like you've probably seen this kind of character. It's like GLaDOS but nice.
Easy comparison, but she's, I don't know. Astra is the name of the robot that lives in your gun, and I think she's really cute. I mean, I honestly think that the humor in this is like landed for me more than it failed, which is more than I can say for a lot of games like this.
Yeah, the developer said that the inspiration came from the trailer for Tenet, which was one of my favorite quotes I've ever heard, because it's not the movie Tenet, it's the trailer of like, what would this be? And that's including the Britishness. I mean, it's Entropy Centre,
That's
RE
funny.
even. So I mean, Daniel Stubbington, I am already know that this person is British from the opening, but
Okay.
I'm okay with the entropy, building a better tomorrow. But I just love the idea that this is what you think Tenet is going to be about before you see Tenet. The idea that you can point a gun at objects and reverse them.
It is weird that there were so many cubes in the Tenet trailer and then so few in the movie.
And bounce pads.
Yeah. This is this is a first-person puzzle game, and when you hear first-person puzzle game, you do immediately think of Portal, but like the groundwork has been laid. This is an established formula. It's only the core mechanic, the gun, is the thing that this game does that is fairly original. And then the like puzzle elements, I think wisely are kept very simple, and familiar. So you are going through these test chambers, like Shane mentioned, very, very reminiscent of the structure of like a Portal game. And there's been lots of imitators since, and of which this is one. And generally, the goal is I need to get out of that door. But in between you and the door are a number of obstacles, things like locked doors that can only be unlocked if you or a cube is placed on a particular pad, jump pads that fling you through the air, things like rivers where you can place something in a river and it'll float lazily down the river at a set pace. Lots of other little elements like that. The sort of things that you would expect in a first-person puzzle game. Walls that you can see through, but not shoot your gun through. Walls that you can see through and shoot your gun through. Walls that you can do neither. All that kind of stuff.
Walls that reset time. Walls that you can't bring your brick through.
Exactly, yeah. So all the kinds of stuff that you expect in this kind of game if you've ever played one before. And if you haven't, this is actually not a bad start for this genre. If you're not used to first-person puzzle games, I think it has a really good build in terms of difficulty.
Definitely.
But yeah, the core mechanic, the gun, is the big thing that's different between this and other games like this that you may have played. Portal. So, I don't know. Laura, do you want to explain the gun mechanic? Or
Yeah, so the idea is that you, like most games, you can pick up and move objects, but what it gets a little more fun is that you can shoot your gun at something and use it to reverse time. So when you pick up, let's say you pick up a cube and you start walking with it, your gun is going to have a clock on it that counts, that shows how long of a timer you have to reverse time on it. You can then, let's say it gets up to 21 seconds. Then you can reverse that by shooting it and reverse it back in time that 21 seconds. So you can't go past the timer. You can't go too far away from the object, but there are some limitations to the time rewinding. But you can shoot at your cube or whatever object you're reversing and use it to go back in time that length of time.
And notably, just that one object. So you're not reversing in time. Other objects in the space aren't reversing in time. This lets you do things like drop a cube and then later on shoot it with your gun to have it levitate back up to where it was. That kind of
Yes, and you could stop it at any point in that travel time. So if you pick a cube up and you walk 300 feet, you can go back 50 and stop. You can go back 100 and go all the way back to the beginning, and you can pause it at any point in that trajectory as you go. So you
can't like hit play and have it go back through what it
it will stop where it is at the current time.
That got me several times. Had rewound this thing a little too far. Now I've got to reset the puzzle, try again.
And also importantly, you can really only rewind one object at a time. So if you do rewind something and say it's like midway through its little rewind or whatever, and then you use your gun on a different object, whatever you were previously rewinding will just drop to the ground, and its sort of rewind timeline will be forgotten. So that's probably the biggest limitation that I can remember.
I think earlier you can have it, but you can't have two mid rewind. Like you can if you think about like unrolling a spool, you could unroll both spools at once and start winding it, but you can't like go back and forth.
That may be more accurate. And I'm wondering if maybe there's little finer points to this that are sort of the deal. And you might run into puzzles where it's very important to like remember and understand some finer point of exactly how this interacts.
Yes. They're on individual timelines, but it's also very easy. At any point, you could accidentally hit B or hit whatever button and shoot it and reset one of them. So like that might be what you're doing. They are on their own tracks per se, but they are almost identical cubes. So it can be very easy to pick up one, which one is the one that I did all this to. However, you can hit a button and preview what the track is, which I used quite a lot, especially in early rooms when there are like 3 cubes and you're doing something. Later on, there's more objects and you're not just shooting cubes all the time. But towards the beginning, it's very much like a 3-card Monty problem.
Yeah, it is kind of the nice. It's like very helpful the way that it shows those kind of trails. I almost think of it the objects having a tail.
Yeah,
dotted line going back along the path that they have previously moved along, and you can rewind them and stop them at any point there.
Yeah, and early on, because I was having such trouble remembering to drop cubes, I was picking up something and like walking in a circle on the platform so that I could have a while, like just to give myself time, because it doesn't time when you're standing still because it's designed to drop you at any point. But I was just so bad at missing the time that I started just walking in circles on the path, so I had more buffer time.
Yeah, I actually did the same thing. It was kind of funny. It makes sense. The thing that I ended up doing, so many of these puzzles end up boiling down to, you're going to have to move a block or 2 blocks or, various objects in a set order onto a series of different pressure plates. So the order, you basically are putting the blocks onto the pressure plates in kind of reverse order. Well, sometimes my brain doesn't necessarily want to come up with exactly what that order is. So a nice hack is just put the blocks on every single pressure plate like 3 or 4 times, and you'll be able to just rewind to wherever you need it to go. So
put it on really every plate. Make little circles on every plate, so you have a 3-second buffer. Like
spin around 3 times. Next plate, spin around 3 times.
Oh man, that strategy only really worked for me for the first 3 hours, and after that, I was starting to run into stuff that got
the timing is too tight.
Yeah. There's timing issues, or just stuff that I didn't think of,
Yep.
Like the first puzzle that really stopped me was one that involved dropping a block from a platform and then having to catch it from a lower platform, basically.
Yeah, I know exactly the one you mean.
Yeah, and man, that had me stumped for a long time because you can't really snatch it out of thin air. You have to use you have to drop it and then use the rewind to levitate it back up to where you can grab it. And anyway, lots of that kind of thing started happening that was really quite difficult. Also, there are some moments in this that, I would definitely not say this game has combat, but there are bits where this game will try to break the pattern of just constantly throwing puzzle after puzzle at you by having things like little chase sequences or little times where you're being attacked by robots.
There's a rail shooter in between the first 2 worlds, which I was not expecting. Get on this little platform and move, and the world's going to fall apart, and you have to shoot objects before you die. I was like, why is there a rail shooter in this game?
Yeah, well, these great little set pieces, I really really like. There's one where there's you're escaping from a flood of water that's coming up, and you it's quite a lengthy little sequence where you have to rewind time just right to get a falling pillar to become a bridge that you can cross, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the one I would calling a rail shooter because you're moving.
And then finally you escape from the rising tide of water, and Astra says something like, "Thank you for not getting me wet." That was very funny.
I see you have survived.
Yeah. But And then there's the Entropy Centre is populated by these little like very cutesy robots that are kind of like a cross between like mid-century modern furniture and an aibo, and they're just little smiley cubes with little antenna arms, I guess, and they can shoot. At times, they get mad at you and can shoot balls of lightning at you, but of course you can rewind the lightning to fling the balls of lightning back at them. So even when it decides to do like very light combat, you're still doing it via rewind, which I thought was clever.
Yeah. A thing I appreciated is the ability to get a lot of red herrings out of the way. So there are things you can rewind and they will just stay that way permanently, and you know they're not part of the puzzle. And I loved this. I do know a couple of people in like Steam comments said that made things too easy, but I was like, no, if this is not part of the puzzle, I just put it back and it never can touch it again. I am so happy with that decision. Like,
oh yeah,
highlight things I can move. Don't let me point at things I can't touch. Like they said that the interactable objects shouldn't be highlighted, and that you should, like, everything should collapse after you point at it. And I was like, nope, those are quality of life improvements.
Very
and
foolish,
you're wrong.
in my opinion. Yes, you're wrong. Yeah, no, like in a game like this, like these are spaces that are cluttered with stuff. We haven't talked too much yet about like the environments of the Entropy Centre, but like areas that are cluttered with stuff, things like CRT monitors sitting on like very officey desks, and
Ding.
like you know, gamer brain will sometimes pop up and say like, hey, you're spending all this time figuring out this puzzle because you only have one cube. But like that CRT monitor looks pretty heavy. You could probably put that on one of these pads. But no, like, because you can't pick it up because this is a puzzle game, and it's fine. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I would say like that when you look at games that are kind of in this like micro genre, you know, of first person puzzle games, there are games that are completely carried by their core mechanic, right? That's kind of what they all want to be, is how Portal kind of had the whole thing completely like you get the special magic gun, you're sold. You know, the critique of this genre is usually like, okay, you know, you get one gimmick and then you make maybe 4 to 6 hours of content for that gimmick, and like that's your game. But
that's why there's been no Portal 3.
It's been 10 years.
People don't like to hear it. They don't like to hear the harsh truth, but the truth is that there can never be a Portal 3 because they're all out of puzzles.
And I mean, so this kind of like game space is kind of limited, and it grows out of its limitations. Like you can't you could have a game where like you have the time rewindy gun and you can use it on everything, but that it's a very different game at that point. It's not really the same kind of like puzzle game. So you kind of have to have those limitations for it to work. That said, I did feel the disappointment of that. I you know, you pick up that gun and you're immediately like, you know, this, I saw in the trailer, I saw this do some pretty incredible stuff. And then you pick it up and you walk into the next room and there's one thing you can point it at and it glows orange. Like I totally get that is a it's not
it's not a sandbox game, it's a puzzle game.
Right.
And but the world is very large, and I can see why you feel like it might be a sandbox game because the environment is so large and there are so many rooms.
And it's so detailed.
And the environment is so detailed and realistic. That's exactly it. And
I can't read all the dossiers, and I wanted to pick them all up. Like, yeah.
It's not like a white box or gray box like wireframe thing like some puzzle games like in this genre, like Cube, with a Q, which I did not like very much. You know, are you know, they're trying to reduce this down to just shapes. And that's, you know, for good reason. Puzzles often work best when you reduce all that clutter, and, you know, people will be able to focus more on the specific puzzle being set to them. But God, that's boring, right? Like I really liked the elements of this where you do have those portal, or I even thought a lot of control like spaces where you're exploring these like bizarre mid-century office areas, and there are like slideshows about the time they rewound the earth to save the pandas, that kind of thing. And that's that kind of color, as well as just the color of like the talking gun and all of that stuff. Like you don't get that if you have a game that's reduced down to just like, can I fit like rectangular shapes into rectangular holes? Like having the flavor of this, having being a space with stuff in it, where you can tell a little bit of a story through I'm just about to use the phrase environmental storytelling. Like you can't do that if you are doing a puzzle game where you've reduced everything down to its component parts. So I think they really threaded the needle well here. And I am fine with only being able to interact with the orange glow stuff. You know?
Right. I am, and I'm not. There's a lot of room for like how you interact with the environment in a first-person puzzle game. I think about games like Superliminal that we played, and in that game, like the environment is incredibly detailed and surreal, and like does try to tell you a story, although it's a very surreal story, and is very intricately linked to the way that the game plays. And I think about games, you talked about games that are more like a wireframe. I mean, think about things like Manifold Garden, which is like a first-person puzzle game as well.
God, that game was gas.
Yeah, and that had, again, a very abstract thing where you were
That's true. You've made a liar out of me. I love that
puzzles in an infinitely like complex geometric space. That kind of thing is really cool, and it really works. In this game, I felt like the gun had two things that it could do, right? One is rewind cubes, right? And the puzzles are all rewind cubes. And then the second thing that it could do was set piece action rewinds, right? So the cool thing is that this game does, I think, better than a lot of first person puzzle games, tell a story and kind of set a scene. Not, I think the Portal games really put a ton of effort into that, but and people really enjoyed that aspect of them. But most games in this genre don't tell a story. Yeah, most games in this genre don't tell a story. You think about first person, actiony puzzle games. I even think about games like Super Hot and things like that. They're not typically very story rich. This game tries to give you these kind of big set piece things that you feel like you're a part of. But it does feel very separate from the puzzle solving with sometimes there's the occasional exception of like, well, you need to rewind a platform that you're going to be jumping onto to get out of the room. But mostly the game is a game about moving blocks around. And so it does kind of feel a little disconnected in that way for me.
I think the story is mostly in the progress bar, oddly enough. Like the idea that after each time you finish it, you're getting a little bit more entropy, like you're getting a little bit more of the world. It's the idea is that you're building towards something, but you don't know what. And I think that's an interesting tweak on other games that are just like, great, you did the next level. Like this is like, oh, there's a counter. Like, what is this counter building toward? Why am I building entropy energy? What am I 6%, 10%, 12% towards? So I think it's like an interesting balance that's the intrigue is the progress bar.
I'm pretty sure it's in the trailer. There's this one initial big set piece.
It's the first 3 minutes of the game.
I mean, it's very early. We're talking about the moment where we see the Earth get hit by the giant meteor. Or whatever
it's not
it is, right.
It's not quite the first 3 minutes. I think you definitely play.
Yeah, you've been playing a while. It's within the first 2 hours at the most. And this is, by the way, we haven't.
I meant the opening scene. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So I believe this game is about 10 hours. And I'm saying that I believe because I haven't actually finished it yet. We try to finish games for this show. This one is a little on the longer side for us, and just because of the way that the timing of the episode ended up, I was not able to complete it before the deadline. But I played quite a lot of it at this point, and really, really enjoyed what I've played so far. So if there's any big reveals in the last 10 minutes, and it wouldn't surprise me if they did something fun with that, cool. I'm looking forward to that. But you won't get spoiled by me because I don't know it yet. But the set pieces at the beginning, incredible. Like you've figured out the entropy rewinding mechanic, and then we see
by the beginning you mean, just for clarification, we were talking about two different things. I was talking about the cutscene at the beginning. Raygan is talking about revisiting this several hours into the game. Yes.
Sorry, okay. Remind me about the cutscene at the beginning, because it's been a little long enough that I'm not sure I remember what you're talking about.
At the beginning, you were walking along a path, and you see these odd floating, like office rooms floating in space, right. And ahead of you is the Earth, and then you see the Earth get hit and a huge explosion, and then you wake up in a room in the Entropy Centre.
Right.
With no memory of how you got there.
The initial scene has a sort of like surreal quality to it. So I kind of, it
is interpreted. It could be a dream. It could be reality. It is unclear.
Yeah, but yeah, there's a very dramatic moment about, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half or so into the game where you step out into an area where you clearly see, oh yeah, we actually are on the moon, and you're looking out at the Earth and you see it get absolutely creamed. And the thing that's implied really heavily early on, like to the point where like I think it treats it as a little bit of a reveal, but it's been implied so heavily that it's not, is that the idea that like that we have rewound this specific event so many times that is why the Entropy Centre is in absolute ruins. Like there'll be, voiceover from the robot voice announcer that's like, we have rewound 99999. Like there's been a buffer overrun on the number of times they've had to try to correct this absolute devastation of the Earth by a giant meteor. And that's a fun idea. Like, it's obviously got like a climate change angle, because we all think about that a lot right now, and they specifically hammer on that sometimes. Like they rewound 5 years to save the pandas, that kind of thing. But like this idea of like rewinding the Earth to stop a giant meteor, but like you can't, the meteor's too big and too fast. Like that's a really fun idea. And I
think we've all been in a video game where like we saved and it was too late. Your game save was a little bit too close to the end.
But it's also pretty lighthearted. Like I know it is a game about the doomed Earth and the failure of humanity to save it. A very poignant theme at the moment. But there we are, and but it's still a comedy basically, and and not just because Astra's cute and chipper. There's a kind of just general dry humor to the whole thing. I didn't know that this. Actually, I should have guessed. Why did I not? I was about to say I didn't know that this game was British, and then I'm like, wait, the title. I should have known from the very beginning. But it does have a certain Britishiness to the humor of it that's very dry, and I think it works really well.
So did y'all see Don't Look Up?
No. In fact, I wanted to. I specifically chose not to see Don't Look Up because I was worried it would be too nihilistic for me.
It's a real. I found myself liking it in spite of the movie.
I heard people loved it or people hated it, so I'm glad to hear someone who does a middle ground opinion.
Yeah, I both loved and hated it. So yes, I'll take my stand there in the middle. This game kind of reminded me of that. Anytime you were seeing like someone's old PowerPoint left up or something about the various ways they have rewound the end of the world.
We're all just trying to push it back one more minute.
Mm-hmm.
Relatable content.
Oh God.
I want to give a brief kudos to the way that this sections puzzles, because as I mentioned before, some games are incredibly Portal-like, of like, you were in this room, you finish it, you're in this room. And this has some of that DNA, but that does group them into like zones or levels and themes, where there's often like a breakup set piece or another like different type of game, different type of puzzle level in the middle of it. I appreciated that grouping because to me, that's the right length to play a game like this. I get a little tired and ready for something else, about like hour and a half to 2 hours of a puzzle game like this. And I really appreciated like Puzzle Zone 1, Puzzle Zone 2. Laura, go make dinner. Like, it sounds like such an odd thing to praise a game for, but so few puzzle games are grouped in a way that makes your life easy to live. They often are like really hard to guess how long it is. You might have one puzzle that takes 20 minutes and is like 8 rooms long, followed by a puzzle that's just like incredibly hard and tiny. Like it can be really hard to gauge time in a puzzle game. So anything to make that like quality of life better, I appreciate. This person seems to have played a lot of puzzle games and made it to get around that pet peeve. And I was very happy for that.
Yeah, the structure of games has not improved since the Mario 3 overworld. And
100%.
People need to be looking back. give me games where I can tell how close I am to the end.
Give me checkpoints. Let me know where I am.
let me detour through the forest.
Please.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I also appreciated the way that it has explicit acts with act breaks.
Yeah,
kind of,
I love that.
It has an act, and then usually at the beginning or end of an act there'll be a little like sometimes there's these big set pieces, but also sometimes there's just little minor stuff like I'm thinking of the moment on the elevator where it's faded in from the previous act, and you see she's been riding a lengthy one of those like sideways what do you call those the elevators that go on like a slant
funicular.
She's riding some kind of like lengthy funicular ride, and she's been tossing. You see the end of her tossing a can into a trash can and rewinding it so she can toss it again. And she finally makes the basket, and Astra says something like, "That took you 48 tries." And there's a very small moment, but like those little moments did a great job of like say, okay, yes, this is the beginning of a new act. I liked that quite a lot. So yeah, very well paced, I thought, and pretty decent interspersing of the like narrative and humorous content in between the puzzles.
Yeah, so much of a puzzle game is a tutorial that is fun to play. Like that's what puzzle games are in many ways.
Basically.
And so like breaks where you can take go get a sandwich and come back, and you're not like worried about that like losing that expertise. I want every puzzle game to do this, and it doesn't happen enough.
Yeah, it's well done here. I was also gonna also briefly call out how I think this game has really, really good performance for what it is. It's a very attractive game. I think I don't think it's like it's not like ultra next gen HDR, RTX, whatever, but it's really nice looking, like beautiful environments with lots of little detailed objects and stuff. And I was playing this entirely on the Steam Deck. You can play the sound effect because I'm talking about the Steam Deck again, but here we are. And it ran at 60 FPS the entire time, which was at default settings, which looked really nice. Not always the case for 3D games of any kind. And yet this one, like the only time it dipped was certain scenes where there was a lot of water. And I was like super impressed with the performance. And this game is out on everything. It's on PlayStation 4 and 5, at Xbox One and the Series. And I think it would probably run just fine on any of those. If it ran as well as it did for me on the Steam Deck, it'll probably run just fine on whatever your chosen game device of choice is.
Played beautifully on Xbox S for me.
Nice. Yeah. So I was really, really impressed with it from that angle too. So yeah, it's on Steam. I mentioned, what is the price of this game?
$25.
$25, a respectable indie price. And honestly, $25 for this that's a great, honestly, this is a really, really polished game. I just think it's really, really cool. Any last thoughts on the Entropy Centre?
One tiny one. The dev has said that he's working on DLC, or not even DLC, just more content, like more stuff for it. So I think the world is something that if you like it, there's got to be more of it, probably.
Yeah, it hardly needs it. It feels like quite a package, but like, yeah, that's great. Sure, throw me more puzzles or whatever. So you can find this game on all the platforms I just mentioned at $25, presumably. And I would say about 10 hours or maybe a little less, depending on what kind of dunce you are. Do we have time for some What's Making Us Happy this week?
Yeah.
So, Shane, what's making you happy this week?
The thing making me happy this week is a game that my whole family has kind of been getting into and playing. A little bit of a throwback, I guess. This one's from 2018. The game's called Love You to Bits. Have either of you guys ever seen or heard this one before?
I feel like we've talked about it on the show, haven't we?
I don't know if we have or not. I certainly hadn't. Julia found it because she was looking for something to play with Ty, and it's on Apple Arcade. It's in the App Store. It's on Google, and it is a point and click adventure. But so basically, it's it's this story of a little tiny kind of human explorer who's on a spaceship with his robot girlfriend, and they get blown up by a villain, and his robot girlfriend, all of her little robot parts are blasted onto different planets.
Yes, I've played this on.
Yes,
on
this is from the Tiny Thief people.
Yeah, that's right. I played this years ago.
Yes,
you played this. Yes, well, I'm playing it just now, and
I'm so happy it's still around.
Yeah, it's great. I'm going to be looking at all their other games. This is the Alike is the studio, and they've done several other games. There's Love You to Bits, Bring You Home, All of You. They all seem like they have a little bit of the same DNA. Something called Very Little Nightmares. By the way, I've had Little Nightmares on my Steam account. I downloaded it just to check it out on the Steam Deck. I'm back into that game as well. Very Little Nightmares is like Little Nightmares for kids, which is kind of weird, but okay. Anyway, Love You to Bits. The thing that I really like about it is it has all the DNA of a point and click adventure game, but instead of having your character explore like your screen to screen and going around and collecting all the keys or whatever, every single bit of this is one screen, and it's like a bunch of little one screen point and click adventure games, and so it's simple enough that like anybody can really engage with it, and every single level has some kind of gimmick that's unique and fun. Like one will be a planet that's round, and like all four seasons are represented on it, like different quadrants of a pie, and one will be an alien abduction scene that that is being rewound over and over again, and basically every single little scene is quick enough that you can do like very, very. You can play it in maybe a couple of minutes, but they're fun and obscure enough that the puzzles were always like pretty satisfying, and it was a big hit with the 5-year-old set for the Kelly household. So I got to recommend this one. I don't, if we have talked about it on the show, I'm kind of surprised. I wonder when that was, but great game.
I think I'm misremembering. I think I played it thinking that I might suggest it for the show, and I didn't finish it, but I played a good chunk of it on iOS like years ago, thinking like, hey, this might be for the show. And I don't think I ever did actually end up bringing it up. So I'm glad you did. So Laura, what's making you happy this week?
Well, a friend at work, Amanda, referred me to Learned League, and I was very skeptical. This is an online trivia league where they send you 6 questions a day. And I looked at the questions and I was like, I don't get this. This is like a weird trivia cult. All I do is that you have to be referred into it. You can't just join. You like the person like
are you allowed to talk
sign
about
on
it on a podcast?
Well, yeah, the person you can refer a friend, and then you're like sign on the Bible or whatever that they're not going to cheat because like I vouch for this person, they won't cheat and wreck my personal reputation. It's very strange. Like they send you an email and it's like an impenetrable, like you have reached this person and here's your score of whatever. But the trick is that you get one season. Your rookie season is free, and then after that you pay dues. And a lot of people pay dues. So I was like, what is this and why does everyone like it? The answer is it's a trivia league where it's not about how many things you know. It's about how well you guessed your opponent's going to get. So the idea is that you play defense. Like you get 6 questions and you can answer them. And then you assign the point values for your opponent. So you can look at their history of questions, be like, this person sucks at literature. So I'm going to assign the literature question 3 points. They've gotten every single current event. So the current event one's 0 points. And you like play defense at it. Am I enjoying this because I'm currently ranked first in the rookie league? Absolutely.
Nice.
This is the last day I could probably say that, because like any day my streak will be broken. I've won the first 7 games.
Is there money on the line for this? Because I hope
No.
hope you clean up.
No, there's no money on the line.
Okay,
Apparently, the winner of the top ranked. The winner of the top ranked league gets a scarf. Like there's literally nothing else. The other weird thing is it's real names, but not really. So it's your first, you can't choose your username. It's your first initial and your last name. And so day like 4, I was matched up with somebody who I'm pretty sure I knew at Northwestern. You also can see if they choose to put your college in. So I was like, first letter, very unique last name. Pretty sure I got drunk with this person like 15 years ago. And it was just wild. It's such a weird, pedantic thing. The questions are incredibly complex, but fair. There's only 6 a day. And like I probably get maybe 3 right. But I tend to open it in the morning and I look at the question and go, this is horrible. I know none of these. And then after I've had coffee in the afternoon, I look at it and I'm like, oh, I actually know some of these. But it's one of those I have until like 3 in the morning to answer them every day. It says every time, do not cheat, like do not forfeit is in every single email. There's so many statistics. This has been written up in the New Yorker. This has been written up in the Ringer. People talk about this like a cult. And I kind of was like, I like trivia, but I don't know if I'm like a do this every day type of person. I'm still jury's out, but I am really enjoying. The commissioner is named Commissioner Thorsten A. Integrity. Yeah, it's incredibly low tech. The stats page are like baseball or baseball level. Like other people who have categories are like K Jennings, D Benioff, like a bunch of like entertainment people are in here because it's real names. And so I'm still in the rookie league. That's the only reason why I'm on top. But this is so strange. I feel like I've been invited to a club that I'm doing well at and don't know if I want to commit. But I don't know. Like, is this going to be the thing I end up doing for the rest of my life? I have no idea.
Well, good luck. You'll get that scarf someday, Laura.
The defense thing is actually, I think, what I'm better at, because I'm not better at answering the questions than everyone in the rookie league, but I seem to be way better at guessing what people are going to get right than others. My defense is incredibly high. Again, because they have statistics, I have apparently given up for every my opponents tend to get 0.892 of every point, like of every possible point. So I apparently underscore them every single time so far. We'll see if this continues.
Well, I will ask for an update when you I don't know, are there seasons or how does that work? Like
it is seasons. So the rookie season will expire February 9th. So it started let me see if I can get you a sample question. This site is absolutely it looks like I'm looking at like a web 2.0 thing. This is so out of date. The phrasing of the question is what's wild. For example, in the NATO phonetic alphabet, A equals alpha, B equals bravo, C equals Charlie, etc. One letter is represented by a word that is the name of a national capital city. What is that city?
Lima?
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's what I gave 0 points to today, because I was like, pretty sure most people can, with an entire day, remember the NATO alphabet if they're signing up for an online trivia league.
I was like, is Lima a capital city? I don't even know.
But see, that's the thing. You're like, huh. I gave 3 points to a geological process known as orogeny, refers per the term's Greek root to the formation of what?
Stone?
I said caves. The answer was mountains.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, someone could guess that, but like, I wouldn't have guessed mountains. So the questions are weird. The whole thing's a cult. I'm into it, but I don't know if I'm going to pay for it after my rookie year.
The more questions you answer, the clearer your thetans become.
Well, the thing is, every time I talk to someone, I'm like, I'm trying Learned League. They've either never heard of it, or they're like, oh my God, I've been playing for 3 years. How did you get a referral? And I'm like, what? What? Like, I asked
for you.
Someone at work kind of forced it on me. So
sounds like Six Sigma meets Scientology. Good luck.
Good luck. I will every weekday until February be playing this, and then we'll decide if I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. Watch me like suddenly turn now that I've said I'm doing well on the podcast. I'm going to lose my next 7 matches and just be a disgrace.
How much money are we talking about here for?
Oh, it's like $30 a year. It's the same amount of like a New York Times crossword kind of subscription or something.
Everyone throws in $300 and then whoever walks away with the gold gets a car or something.
No, it's literally just paying the person to like write the points, do all the management, and pay some coders. Like,
gotcha.
It's it's less than a $5 Patreon. So
hey, great. Love it. Well, speaking of $5 Patreons, no. So this week has seen the implosion of Twitter, which is not the thing that's making me happy. I actually love Twitter. I've been using it for over a decade, and it's an important place for me. It's like I don't actually. As I've talked about recently on the podcast, I've been trying to like separate myself from it a little bit more, especially now that it's owned by a weirdo who seems to have the best interests of no one at heart. Just a wild set of events that I won't comment on here. But man, weird stuff. But it had me again thinking about, like, is there another place for me on the internet if Twitter becomes intolerable? And so I just thought I'd give a quick plug for Mastodon is actually good, guys.
Really?
Yeah. No, I've back in like 2016, I think, maybe 2018, I forget. There was a previous sort of exodus, I think, based on some bad moderation decisions around trans people, if I recall correctly, on Twitter, that had me creating a Mastodon account way back then and just checking it out. And I didn't stick with it, but I did, I did figure out the basics. But coming back to it years later, I'm extremely impressed with how most of the technical issues that I ran into back then have been pretty much entirely solved. And it has, I think, a pretty good culture for one of these. And I've had a lot of fun, more fun using Mastodon than I've had using Twitter in years over the last 2 weeks. So I thought I'd give it a bit of a plug. I know it's a little confusing, so I won't give you the whole spiel here, but if you are curious about Mastodon, or curious about like a second social network other than Twitter to add to your, I don't think anybody, even the people on Mastodon, are like, some of them are hardliners who've just like deleted their Twitter and moved on. I'm more in the camp that I think is pretty large of just like, I need to have some other place in case Twitter becomes completely intolerable. And right now it is, the frog is boiling. But it's, the technical stuff of Mastodon ends up putting a lot of people off that I think otherwise would end up enjoying it a lot. You don't really need to know most of the stuff about Mastodon and how it works under the hood to enjoy it. It's essentially a Twitter clone with some thoughtful changes. But the stuff that you kind of need to understand, Mastodon is not a single service run by a single person. It is a federated platform. That's the terminology. But what that really means is that there are a bunch of different people that run their own Mastodon servers or instances that all talk to each other. It doesn't really matter which one you're on. They have a website called joinmastodon.org where you can go and see a directory of servers that you can join. The main thing that you're deciding when you decide to join a particular Mastodon server, it doesn't mean that you can't talk to just anybody. It really only affects like what is the at somethingorother.com or what have you at the end of your username, which is very similar to email. But the big thing that you're choosing when you choose a Mastodon server is each of them have their own moderation team. So unlike something like Twitter, where they have, billions of users and a team of thousands doing all the moderation, and it's this totally black box. When you join a Mastodon server, you are putting your account on that server, and your mods, the people who are deciding whether, for example, like your posts are bannable or whatever, are the people that run that server. And that means that there's differences in rules between them. And that's actually good, I think, because like, let's say that you, if you're, it's something like Twitter, like you don't get to choose what the policies are. You on Mastodon, you can. Now, let's say that you choose a server where the policies are racism is good, actually. Well, then other servers have the option to either ban you individually or ban your entire server. So there's a sort of a community consensus angle where, in general, they tend to have similar community standards, and the ones that don't mostly only connect with like-minded servers. So you're not, not only do you not have to block individual bozos, like, a Nazi joins Twitter, he has access to every single other person on Twitter. A Nazi joins Mastodon, and either he gets kicked off of his instance or he joins a Nazis only Mastodon instance, and all of the other thoughtful Mastodon instances say, hey, no Nazis, and block the entire Nazis instance. So it's actually, I think, a really smart way of handling that problem. And so there's not, I think, a lot of harassment or other bullshit on there. It's pretty chill.
So far.
Yeah, well, so far. But hey, all these things have a life cycle, and I think they have pretty good ideas in place to address that stuff. And, otherwise, like, it's basically Twitter. Features are all pretty much the same. It works pretty much the same. One notable difference is that they did away with the quote tweet feature from Twitter. They don't have that on Mastodon because they believe that, or the main developer behind the code believes that is primarily a tool that's used to drive harassment. And I kind of believe it. I think it's one of those things that's, there are good uses for it, but you can do all those good uses in other ways. But the quote tweet is it's a bit of a dangerous tool, and maybe the service is better without it. And I think Mastodon is a good example of maybe it actually is. And anyway, if you're just getting started on there, it can be really hard to it can be daunting to think about like rebuilding an entire network from scratch. But you don't have to feel like this is a Twitter replacement. It's another place that you can go and check out and hang out. And I've actually had a lot of fun building up a new network over there, finding new people to follow. Something like Twitter, I always felt like, adding another person to my 1,000+ Twitter follows was like a commitment because, man, my Twitter is already kind of unmanageable. On Mastodon, I'm just following people because their profile pic looks cool and they tweet one cool thing, and then I'm finding interesting stuff. So I've had a lot of fun with it. And there's also, if you're curious, if you go and sign up, there's some folks who've created some services that will let you do things like scan all of the profiles of everybody you follow on Twitter for Mastodon links and automatically follow those people on your Mastodon account. So you don't have to start 100% from scratch. For me, I follow about 1,000 accounts on Twitter, and I got about 100 accounts automatically on Mastodon to follow, and many of them were the most active and interesting people that I followed on Twitter already. And I'm already up to about 300 people following that I'm following on Mastodon, and I've got a timeline that I'm enjoying reading every day. So I think you should check it out. I think it can be a little daunting for folks, but folks could I think more folks should check it out. Even if you are planning on sticking around on Twitter, which I am, I think it's a nice place to get a different sort of vibe. If you want to follow me specifically on there, I'm at Raygan at mastodon.social. I'll have a link. It's on my Twitter, so you can find me there too. But maybe I'll start mentioning that at the end of the show if folks want to find me on there and instead of or in addition to Twitter. I know that's kind of a weird what's making me happy, but it's been something that I've spent a chunk of time on this week and been pretty happy about. So check it out. So speaking of the socials, this is the point of the show where we plug all the things. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. You can find our show on the internet at www.theshortgame.net or on Twitter at _shortgame. I haven't set up a Mastodon for the show yet. Maybe I will. You can also find our show on Patreon, patreon.com/theshortgame. And that's the number one way you can support the show. We really appreciate it. All of our patrons, thank you so much. I know our schedules have been a little bit more inconsistent over the last few weeks as I've been slowly kind of coming back out of baby mode. But thank you so much for sticking with us. I really appreciate all the support from the patrons. And you can, and if you do support us on Patreon, you get early access to episodes as soon as they're edited. I shoot them straight to a special feed just for you. You also, if you support at the $5 level, get some stickers. And the number one support benefit for all of our patrons is you get access to our Discord, which is where we talk about the show, talk about upcoming episodes, talk about old episodes. If you just want to chime in and talk about Hades, we got some folks talking about that this week, that kind of thing. So great place to hang out on the internet. And let's see, you can find me on the internet on Twitter at Raygan K or on Mastodon at Raygan at mastodon.social. And Laura, where can people find you?
For now, you can find me on Twitter at Laura J. Nash.
Yeah, and as long as it lasts, and until death takes us, we'll be there on Twitter. And Shane, where can people find you?
Well, you can also find me on Twitter at 8bitshane. But given the nature of this conversation, I want to ask our listeners to reach out. If we were to reduce our footprint on Twitter, where would you like to see us? We do, of course, have
please.
our we do have our Discord. That's members only. But if you're a listener and not a member, or if you're a listener and you're active on other social media, I am curious. Should this show have a TikTok? Should this show have a subreddit? Should this show have a forum of some kind? I don't know. What are you doing? What do you like? Where are you guys on the internet?
I'm on Instagram, but it's mostly pictures of rich people's houses I've been to on vacation. So, that's not actually short game related.
That's very specific.
Yeah, I have some photos of my child on Instagram, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where I am socializing about video games. So yeah,
100%.
We could start. The show technically has an Instagram, although I think I've never posted to it.
It's just some land grab. So
yeah, Twitter is always like the social network you set up when you want to tweet about a thing specifically and nothing else. That's the thing about other social networks is they kind of imagine that you're bringing your whole life to them, and Twitter was always like
single serving, baby.
This is where you can drop links and people can decide to look at your links, and there's no other real good alternative. Mastodon is the closest thing I've found, but it's got this. I think it does have a bit of a roof on its popularity. What is
Raygan, is there a Mastodon for me to yell about game shows from non-US countries that no one on the show cares about?
Look, I guarantee you that a couple other things about Mastodon, people really, really use the hashtags over there because the search system basically sucks, mostly by design, but the hashtag system works well. So people use a lot of hashtags there. I bet if you went over there and you started dropping Taskmaster hashtags and stuff.
Taskmaster, Genius, Belgian Mole.
Yeah, I bet you'd find a ton of people.
Yeah.
So, anyway, thank you, listeners, once again for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. If you have a response for Shane about where you think this show should be social, we'd love to hear it. And see you next week.
Bye.